Greetings, traveller from beyond the fog.
Hello, welcome to Outside Xbox and to brand new gameplay footage of Elden Ring, which is, I guess, fantasy speak for Old Ring. It's also the upcoming game from FromSoftware, developer of Dark Souls and mortal enemy of my blood pressure levels. If you're familiar with the Souls series of games, you'll find a lot that's familiar here. The control scheme is roughly the same, it's set in another bleak fantasy world, and it's full of indescribably horrible monsters that have taken personal offence to your very existence. See what I mean about indescribably horrible? What is that even supposed to be? A lot of the changes seem cosmetic at first glance. Souls are now runes, bonfires are now sights of grace, and those giant crabs from Dark Souls 3 are now those giant crabs from Elden Ring. This isn't called Dark Souls 4 though, and with good reason. There's a lot that makes Elden Ring different, and some big changes that may well divide fans of the Souls series. We've played 9 hours of the game and can confirm that some sacred cows have been killed. Along with me. Many times. Yes, the "you died" message is back, but here are 7 reasons Elden Ring isn't just Dark Souls 4. The biggest and most immediately obvious difference between Elden Ring and the Souls games is the fact that Elden Ring features a fully open world. Dark Souls games tend to have a network of mostly linear routes around the game world. Elden Ring, meanwhile, dumps you in a big open field and says have fun. Or more realistically, have a miserable time, but weirdly enjoy it. The result is something that feels like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild if all the happiness had been sucked out of that world and replaced with, I don't know, gross maggots. Even the first major area, which is what we're allowed to explore, is huge, with landmarks dotted around and large enemies like this tree sentinel chap just roaming the area. You know what? I'm actually just going to let him do his thing. What you previously knew as bonfires are now called sights of grace, and these can be found at just about every point of interest out in the world. In general, they feel less punishingly spaced out than bonfires have been in some previous games like Dark Souls 1, meaning you're never too far from a chance to bank your souls. Not souls, I mean runes. I swear I'll get used to this. So the world feels big, but luckily, you've got some new options for getting around. In a game as difficult as Elden Ring, you don't want to be trudging around for a full half an hour to get across the open world map, only to be murdered by an enormous dragon. That's why after the third sight of grace that you rest at, you're introduced to a character called Melina, who straight up hands you a ghostly horse to ride around on.
It will summon a spectral steed named Torrent.
Torrent? Does that mean I can also download a dodgy copy of Photoshop from it? Your horse allows you to travel at high speed around the open world, and if you're an abject coward like me, means you can run directly past all your problems with little to no penalty. If only that worked in real life, am I right? If you insist, you can also attack from the horse, which might be advantageous in certain circumstances where you have plenty of space, or are happy to just perform a sort of horsey drive-by. That'll teach you to try and call for reinforcements. It's not just the horse that is different. Your player character can move in a few different ways too. For a start, sneaking makes its way back into your skill set, lifted from FromSoftware's ninja game, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. This sneaking will allow you to creep around in foliage and stick your enemies in the spine for extra damage. And although you couldn't jump around as much as you like in Dark Souls, probably because it would look goofy, it's definitely an option here in Elden Ring. Yup. Pretty goofy. Useful though. Don't worry, hardcore Souls fans, Elden Ring is still a very difficult game. This is a world that will happily randomly drop an entire pack of wolves on you from the sky. Man, it is raining cats and well, just dogs actually. But look, we've all had a tough couple of years, so we're sort of thankful that there have been a few modest concessions to newcomers in Elden Ring. It's less like being immediately punched in the face, and more like being warned that you're about to be punched in the face, and that you should maybe prepare your face a bit for the punching. For a start, you actually get a map in Elden Ring. Look at it, isn't it pretty, with its identifiable landmarks and clearly marked areas? But don't get too excited, they're not handing these out at a tourist information kiosk at the start of the game. Instead, to get hold of this particular map fragment, yes, it's only a fragment of the full game map, you'll have to sneak your way right into the middle of an enemy encampment full of hostile knights. Too proud to just ask for directions? I know how it is. If the concept of a visual reference for your location in the world has you screaming "Get good, casuals" at the top of your voice, you're going to absolutely loathe this next one. Unless you're actively in the middle of a scrap with an enemy, you can fast travel pretty much any time and from any place on the map you like, instantly teleporting to any previously unlocked site of grace in the world. Somewhere in the distance, I think I just heard a subreddit explode. Customization of your character's outfit and equipment has been a key part of FromSoftware games for years, and that's absolutely the case again in Elden Ring. As you can see here, I'm dressed as the Burger King. And now I'm a flame-grilled Whopper. Among the new customization options are weapon modifications called Ashes of War. Apply them to your weapons and you'll instantly modify their stats and add magical properties. For example, the addition of lightning damage. Although they can only be applied to certain weapons, and some weapons will have their own properties baked in, the great thing about Ashes of War is that you can swap them in and out depending on what you're fighting, and it'll usually give that weapon a unique strong attack to boot. I mean, yeah, that'll do. Ashes of War mean you'll be mixing up your combat styles much more frequently than in the Dark Souls series games, making your initial choice of class even less relevant than it was in those games. Besides, why would you choose any class other than Bloody Wolf? You think I'm going to be that weedy looking blindfolded monk guy with his head smashed through a cartwheel? Please. Amateur hour. Good news for anyone who has worse rhythm than your drunk uncle at a wedding disco: if you're no good at parrying, you can bin it off entirely and turn your shield into an effective ranged offensive weapon. In the same way that Ashes of War add unique strong attacks to weapons, certain shields have unique abilities on the parry button. While Dark Souls 3 did have a selection of shields with unique weapon skills, the really interesting ones were few and far between and almost always required you to be close enough to smell your enemy's breath. Which, no thank you, I'm not seeing a whole lot of toothbrushes dotted around Lothric. Elden Ring mixes this stuff up in far more interesting ways. The weirdest shield we found was called the Coil Shield, and while it does look a bit like you're running around with a green poop emoji on your arm, it's actually super useful. That's because rather than parrying, the Coil Shield has an ability called Viper Bite, in which the coiled snake on the shield whips out and bites the enemy for a fairly surprising medium range attack. Okay, using the Coil Shield you lose the chance to parry an attack and respond with an absolutely crushing counter-attack, but if you're irredeemably rubbish at parrying, then be realistic, it probably wasn't going to happen anyway. If you're mostly rocking a melee build, an attack you can use at a distance means you can keep well out of murdering range and still do some pretty effective damage. In fact, in some boss fights, you might even decide to sacrifice your sword entirely for a little bit of extra maneuverability and simply use a shield that effectively takes care of both offense and defense. Truly, the Coil Shield is the combination shampoo and conditioner of Elden Ring items. Speaking of boss fights, killing bosses is essential to the Dark Souls experience, almost as essential as being killed by bosses. However, Elden Ring handles bosses a bit differently. There are plenty of bosses that live behind a fog gate, have their own big old health bar and weird name, but the game considers them lesser, optional enemies. That means it doesn't reward you as highly when you defeat them, even if they're a total pain in the behind. Take, for example, the Burial Tree Watchdog, which for the record isn't a dog at all, but some sort of horrible cat. Defeat this technically optional boss and you get a piddling amount of runes, 800. Instead of a massive rune payday, you get a message saying foe vanquished and then just a weapon customization that may or may not suit your build or playstyle. This is like that time your well-meaning grandma bought you a pair of Elmo from Sesame Street socks for your 19th birthday. Of course, the really substantial bosses, the progression blockers like Margit's the Fell Omen here, will still dish out some runes after the fight for you to spend on levelling up, assuming you can actually beat them, that is. Great foe? He wasn't that great. In fact, he was a real dick.
You're a tarnished. I can see it. And I can also see that you're not after my throat. Then why not purchase a little something? I am Kale, purveyor of fine goods.
The time-honoured summoning system from Dark Souls, where you invite someone much better at the game than you to come in and do the boss for you, still exists in Elden Ring, but it's gone through some major changes. First, if you want to be able to see the summoning signs of other players, you have to use the correct item, and I've got some bad news for you, that item is now a gross severed finger. Anyone else think it's strange that you're running around with a pocket full of human fingers? Other fingers, in your deeply weird collection of fingers, allow you to put down your own summon sign to help others, invade other players, or call for help if you're being invaded. While we don't know how plentiful these items will be in the final game, it should at least be a bit more obvious what you should be using and when. The biggest change to summoning though is that you can now buy summons from merchants or find them out in the world, and your companions are no longer limited to humanoid form either. If you feel like your whole deal will be elevated by the addition of a pack of 3 spectral wolves while you're fighting a boss, that is absolutely an option. Though I do have to take issue with the item description. They're not really lone if there's 3 of them, are they? Besides, might I recommend the fish? Specifically, the weird poisonous ghost jellyfish you can find in the woods near Stormvale Castle. You know what? In this game it's just nice to have a friend. There you have it, those are the 7 ways Elden Ring isn't just Dark Souls 4. But what do you make of this brand new gameplay footage? Dark Souls fans, have they made it too easy in deference to those filthy casuals? Filthy casuals? Might you actually give this game a shot? Let us know in the comments, that's what they're there for, and like and subscribe to Outside Xbox for much more from Elden Ring ahead of its launch in late February. Thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.